Yeah. So it's very nice that we're united in an effort to try to preach in New York City. And yes, definitely, we all feel a little bit out of sorts and out of station, not being able to. You would never think that this could happen in New York City, that you wouldn't be able to be out in the street and out in the public by legal mandate. You're not allowed to do our thing. So somehow or another, we're trying to keep the internal mood. Krishna is the recipient of our activities, and the goal is to please him. So, but the open order is that Krishna wants us to distribute this to the public in general. So now somehow we're not able to directly hand to hand, person to person. So we're trying to do it in the best way we possibly can. It forces us all, I think we can all agree, that we have to become a lot more internal and deep in our own understanding of Krishna consciousness, and it really helps us to be able to separate, the real sincere spiritual part of ourself from things which might not really be necessary in our thinking and motivations. So that's my introduction, my response to your introduction. So we're going forward again in the Bhagavad-gita. In January, we reached a hallmark milestone in the 9 years of Bhagavad-gita at 26 Second Avenue, that the entire book was completed. So what do you do when you complete transcendental literature? Do you move on to some other literature? No. You go back to the beginning and start again. One very wonderful disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Ayendra Prabhu, who I had association with, and he's the inspiration for many to do Hare Krishna kirtan, chant Hare Krishna. He said to one devotee when they completed the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, all right, you go back and you begin again in the first canto, but you're not really in the first canto, you're in the 13th canto. In other words, that, with progressive reading, the subject matter becomes more advanced, elevated, and or your understanding of it becomes all the more elevated, enhanced, sweet, like that. So here we go. The second time around in 26 Second Avenue in the New Age. I think, 26 Second Avenue was the beginning of the temple for Srila Prabhupada, the beginning of ISKCON. And then for a good number of years, up until 1991, it was out of the hands of the devotees. And I don't think until you started in 2011, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there wasn't progressive Bhagavad Gita all the way through up until when you conceptualized it 9 years ago.
Well, by the way, that's actually 10 years ago, isn't it? Oh, you're right. It's 9.5 years ago. Correct. I'm not aware of that program being done in New York or
right.
I don't know, anywhere. I don't know. I'm not.
The history from like 1991 till say 2011, 20 years, were many different types of programs and different types of devotees and different Krishna conscious subject matters, but not formal Bhagavad Gita, one verse after the other in progression, patiently going through the entire literature. So that is a very, very important thing. I think we were speaking about this at the 9th anniversary in January, that to keep Bhagavad-gita as it is, the book that Prabhupada primarily started the Krishna consciousness movement with, of course, along with the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that this, to honor his divine grace and to honor the holy place of 26 Second Avenue, that the best way to do that is to continuously worship the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's words, verse by verse, with Srila Prabhupada's purports. So we're embarking again on that, and we're on verse numbers 27 and 28 of the first chapter, observing the armies. So verse number 27, I'll read that myself. That doesn't have a purport. And then verse 28 has a pretty substantial purport. How do we do the Sanskrit word chanting? Do I say it like normal and people go back and forth, or?
You can just recite it, the Sanskrit, but we won't all, chant back and forth with you.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So this is verse 27. Tan samiksha sakanteya sarvan bandun avastitan kripaya paraya visto vistan idam abrabit. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. So, just a quick preview or backward review, overview, was the very name of this chapter, Observing the Armies. Arjuna wanted to see with his own eyes, finally and conclusively, who was there on the opposite side, who he would have to fight with. So, of course, this Battle of Kurukshetra had been, as we would say, using the word, brewing for a long time. And it finally came to the point where there's no more peace talks, there's no wiggle room anymore to try to settle the thing up in any other way except full-on war. And he's seeing all of his contemporaries, his worshipful elders and teachers, spiritual teachers, his friends, his family members. So for Arjuna, this practically means fighting. He is going to, that everybody that he's known in his life is practically pretty much assured of, and Krishna even tells him later on, no one on this battlefield is going to come back alive. So, what we will see now in verse 28 and subsequent utterances and expressions by Arjuna, how he becomes completely overwhelmed with the enormity and the severity of the situation. So this is verse 28. Arjuna uvacha drištve mam sva janam Krishna yuyustsum samupastitam siddhanti mama gatrani mukam cha parisusyati. So the word for word, Arjuna uvacha, Arjuna said, drištva, after seeing, imam, all these, sva janam, kinsmen, Krishna, O Krishna, yutsum, all in a fighting spirit, sampastitam, present, siddhanti, are quivering, mama, my, gatrani, limbs of the body, mukam, mouth, cha, also, parasuyati, is drying up. Arjuna said, my dear king, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. So we don't repeat back and forth. I'll just continue. Okay. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods, whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjuna, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as the soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, who were seeing their imminent death. And while he was so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community. Haribol, can you still see me? Maybe oh. It's interesting, the text just came up here. Okay, but I'm seeing everybody. All right. There's maybe some magic on Nathabar's computer.
Sasha,
Practically the whole
Sasha,
community.
I think Sasha was
Oh,
instrumental
Sasha did that.
in
Okay.
doing that. I trust
Okay.
everything is fine for all of us. So you just keep on.
Okay. Well, I can see you and I can see Gaurav.
Oh yeah, there's
I can see myself.
different ways you can mess with the screen where you can see everyone or one person.
All of that messing around be done by people who are expert messers around us. And I'll just continue. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed the kind devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, and this is quoting a verse from the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, 12th verse. This is a famous and important verse. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarver gunastatra samasate sura arav abhaktasya kuto mahaguna mano vitenasati davato bihi. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. So that ends the first word. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umalitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Divyat Vrindaranya Kalpajrumada Srimat Ratnagara Singha Sanasto Sriman Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prastalabi Savyamano Smarami. In a temple of jewels underneath the desire trees of Vrindavan, seated upon an effulgent throne, are the divine couple Sri Sri Radha and Govinda, served by their most confidential associates. We beg to offer our respectful obeisances unto them. Dr. Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakalpatarubyas cha, Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha, Patitanam, Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. So, there's two ways that the Bhagavad-gita directs us to try to understand Arjuna's reaction. And the most prominent way is coming later, when Krishna chastises Arjuna, calling him a heavy word. You know, like we have our heavy words to insult somebody now, which are more or less kind of crude insults. But in Vedic times, what to speak of 5,000 years ago, to call someone a non-Aryan, that is like really, really insulting. And why did Krishna call Arjuna a non-Aryan? The core of it was he was pointing out he wasn't seeing things from a spiritual point of view. You are lamenting for that which is not worthy of grief. The wise, they don't lament over the loss of the material body. And then, henceforward, Krishna goes on to explain in the second chapter the difference between the body and the soul. And this is very important foundational knowledge for those to be able to go forward with sufficient determination to get free from the prompting to engage in materialistic activities which are based on ignorantly identifying oneself with the body. We all know, trying to take to Krishna consciousness in a pure way, that we have many physical and perhaps even more problematic mental and intellectual habits that show that we're attached to the materialistic concept of life. And Krishna, he has created a step-by-step program in life for purification. It's in general called the Varnashram system, that in the beginning of one's life, one should gain education to what is the difference between matter and spirit, what's the difference between your real self and your material body, and ultimately be able to dedicate yourself based on that understanding to living a life at least theoretically accepting this to be true, and by living your life in a regulated way where let's say people call it the natural desires that come with this material body, they're regulated, all the while keeping the goal of spiritual understanding in mind. And Krishna accepts someone who is thus sincerely dedicated, and step by step through their life, they become more and more detached physically, mentally, intellectually, even emotionally from the material ideas, material concepts. And the ultimate revelation that we are part and parcel of Krishna becomes manifest. Just 1 second. Prabhupada, very early on, and perhaps this was the first literature that was distributed in the Krishna consciousness movement, and it's now been subsequently made by the millions and millions over the years, on chanting Hare Krishna, which is the name that Prabhupada gave to this little address. He says that as living spirit soul, we are all originally Krishna conscious entities, but due to our association with matter from time immemorial, our consciousness is now polluted by material atmosphere. In this polluted concept of life, we are trying to exploit the resources of material nature, but actually we are becoming more and more entangled in her complexities. This illusion is called Maya, or hard struggle for existence for winning over the stringent laws of material nature. This illusory struggle against the material nature can at once be stopped by revival of our Krishna consciousness. So Krishna, in his most munificent form of Lord Chaitanya, has made the process for one and all very, very easy, simply by chanting the supreme sound vibration, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Prabhupada would say, it doesn't matter what one is, or who one is, or whatever condition of life you're in. It doesn't matter that you take the Krishna consciousness, you chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and along with chanting, he also recommended dancing. One who chanting and dancing, especially, and Prabhupada would recommend before a picture of Lord Chaitanya and his associates, and you will become all perfect in spiritual life. And Prabhupada added also, chant and dance and take prasad. Actually, even Prabhupada said many people aren't even able to understand philosophy, so don't try to make them understand something that at least initially they're unable to understand. Simply distribute Maha Mantra and prasad. And because we say we're going forward with faith, I use the word theoretically accept. We don't have complete realization at this time. And Prabhupada, understanding that, he said, Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. This consciousness is the original energy of the living entity. When we hear the transcendental vibration of Hare Krishna, this consciousness is revived, and the process is recommended by authorities in this age. So, now here, Prabhupada is using this purport to glorify Arjuna, that this is a very good response that he's having. He's saying this is not due to his weakness. Later in the end of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, Prabhupada writes in the purport that the main problem that we have that doesn't allow us to give up completely the materialistic concept of life is weakness of heart. Sometimes we see people come to Krishna consciousness and they have some initial enthusiasm or some sentiment or good feeling to it, but in the long run, there are other things that they ultimately consider more important. And even though they know better intellectually, they can't overcome their attachment to those other things. So that is described as weakness of heart. So Prabhupada is mentioning that he's feeling compassion for all of his friends and elders and contemporaries. It's not a sign of weakness of heart, but is a symptomatic that he's a pure devotee of the Lord. And as part and parcel of Krishna, Krishna himself, he wants to do good for all living entities. Practically speaking, all living entities are expanded to increase Krishna's pleasure. Krishna tells Uddhava, there are two very important Gitas. There's Bhagavad-gita, and in the 11th canto, just before Krishna is to depart the planet, his confidential devotee, whom he ultimately dispatched to Vrindavan to give a message to the residents of Vrindavan and their feelings of separation. You can read that very nicely in the Krishna book, chapters 46 and chapters 47. Uddhava visits Vrindavan. That actually, no one is more dear to me than my pure devotees who have no other goal in life save and except me. I become a devotee of that type of devotee. So, so a good soul, a pious soul, a pure soul will naturally feel very much unhappy when he sees the unhappiness and suffering of others. All different types of suffering. Actually, this is the opposite, the demoniac. When you see somebody who's in a suffering condition, it's a source of happiness to you because it makes your false ego feel better. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his lamenting his position as a conditioned soul, he says, the source of others' unhappiness is a source of great happiness to me. And we see in the material world, everyone wants to be in the highest position, the most famous, the most prestige. We call it the rat race or dog eat dog. There's so much competition. And when we see that someone is in a higher position than ourselves, we become envious. When the four Kumaras were instructing Maharaj Prithu in the 4th canto, they gave a formula how to be completely happy in all circumstances in the material world. When we see someone more advanced or qualified than ourselves, we should be humble and take their association so that by their association we can become elevated. And when we see those that are equal with ourselves, we shouldn't try to compete with them or advertise ourselves as being better, but we should be very jolly and make friendship with them. And when we see someone who is in a lesser position than ourselves, we shouldn't be oppressive and try to lord it over, but we should be very compassionate and try to elevate them. And the opposite of that, the Kumaras say, is the source of all misery in the material world, being envious of superiors, being competitive and vindictive with contemporaries, and being oppressive and downright nasty with inferiors. So, but if you do the former thing, then you'll have no problems wherever you go. So, now, how to be compassionate, just like Arjuna, he's being praised and glorified as being a soft-hearted devotee, but he was in a position of illusion. Of course, Arjuna is an eternal devotee of the Lord. He was placed in this position so that the Bhagavad-gita could be revealed. Similarly, Maharaj Parikshit, he was put in an awkward circumstance that he be cursed to die within 7 days. And true to his pure devotional nature, he did not become upset, but took to the most recommended form of devotional service, hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. And the Lord sent the most qualified devotee, Shukadeva Goswami, to be the speaker of those glories of the Lord, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's recommended, no matter what the problem, no matter what the anxiety, no matter what the situation, no matter how bad it is, the answer for everyone is simply to glorify Krishna, and that will solve all problems in all times, places, and circumstances. In the end of the first canto, in the chapter, Pandavas retire timely. Krishna's returning to tell Maharaj Yudhishthir in Hastinapur that Krishna and the entire Yadu dynasty has disappeared from the planet. And he's saying, now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Bhagavad-gita, in the great intimacy of friendship. Such instructions can relieve the burning heart from all anxiety in all times, places, and circumstances. And Prabhupada writes in that purport there that not only Arjuna, but all of us, we should turn to the Bhagavad-gita for solace, for, in any dire or embarrassing situation that could come in the 11th hour. Prabhupada used a term like that. Arjuna is to be educated what is ultimately compassion. And when he realizes that their temporary material position will come to an end, whether it be by the Battle of Kurukshetra or by ultimately natural causes, we understand the eternal position. What is that? Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings on the battlefield and soldiers, nor in the future will any of us cease to be. And especially, we see here in this world, we all have to leave, and we're all like we're all current contemporaries, but by the laws of time and nature, we're all going to be gone. And however long we've lived in this world, especially if we've lived more years than others were younger, we've seen many friends and relatives and beloved personalities perhaps pass away. They're not with us anymore. And more the people that were our elders or our contemporary friends are not there. And then we find ourselves to be an elder person, and that we don't relate, or the younger people can't relate with us because of our experiences and our, just the fluctuations in the modes of nature seem to separate us. This makes us more and more want to take deeper shelter of Krishna, and ultimately the real party is not here on planet Earth, but in Krishna's Goloka Vrindavan, which is the destination of all pure devotees, and especially for the followers of Srila Prabhupada. There's no other destination than back home, back to Godhead, Goloka Vrindavan Dham. There was the book Easy Journey to Other Planets, which Prabhupada, of course, wrote in 1959. It was timely. Who would be the first Russia or America to go into outer space, land on the moon? And Prabhupada was saying that you can go to the supreme planet by the easy process of bhakti yoga. And one of Prabhupada's early disciples, Hansadutta Prabhu, he just passed away on a very auspicious day, just recently, April 25th, which is Akshaya Tritiya. Astrologically, that literally means the gates to the spiritual world are open or unobstructed. It is perhaps one of the most auspicious days to leave this world upon. So anyway, he was living in the New York area, Hoboken, New Jersey, and he got a mimeographed copy of 26 Second Avenue from a devotee right here on Second Avenue up by 8th Street. They still have that kind of store there, Gem Spa. Maybe it's changed management, but it's the same store that was there over 50 years ago. And he read this book and he became so amazed. He thought, well, this is it. Eureka, this is nirvana. I found it. This is the answer. And he became so ecstatic that ultimately, well, actually, he was married with, she also became a devotee, Himavati, and the devotees at 26 Second Avenue in the spring of 1967. It was just a brahmachari ashram. And he didn't know how to tell him that, so they sent him to Montreal. So he was staying in a kind of like a young people hippie kind of house, and there was one young man named Albert there who had a kind of fusion rock band, and he became interested in Krishna consciousness by Hansaduta Prabhu's preaching, and he later became Bharadvaj, who was one of the primary amazing ISKCON artists. Hansaduta saw his artwork and he took him to Srila Prabhupada in Montreal. This is 1968. He said, Prabhupada, this boy is an amazing artist. And Prabhupada said, oh, and he gave him a picture of Lord Chaitanya. He said, paint this and bring this back. And he did it very quick within one day, and he brought it back to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, Hansaduta said, his eyes lit up like silver dollars. Wow. So then he was commissioned to paint that original painting for the cover of Easy Journey to Other Planets that shows the Bhakti Yoga devotee with shaved head and Sika just reaching his arms up, and he's entering into the lotus flower of Radha and Krishna's Goloka Vrindavan, leaving the Apollo space launch far behind. And Hansaduta on his own decided to borrow some money from somebody, and he printed 5,000 copies of them and went out and sold them himself, all the copies. So we had so much interest in the subject matter. So Prabhupada directs us to the 5th canto, where there's the verse, Yes, Yasti Bhaktir Bhagavatiya Kinchana, Sarver Gunaistacha Samasate Sira, Arava Bhaktasya Kato Mahagunad, Manavratenasati Davato Bihi. So there's a slightly different translation here, as that was printed in the Bhagavad-gita. All the demigods and their exalted qualities, such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation, become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. On the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in material activities has no good qualities, even if he is adept at the practice of mystic yoga or the honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives. He must be driven by his own mental speculations and must engage in the service of the Lord's external energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man? So Prabhupada says in this purport, quoting from the 7th verse of the 15th chapter, the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditional life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. All living entities are part and parcel of Krishna, and therefore when they revive their original Krishna consciousness, they possess all the good qualities of Krishna in a small quantity. When one engages himself in the 9 processes of devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, worshiping the Lord, offering prayers, making friendship, and ultimately surrendering one's very self, one's heart becomes purified, and he immediately understands his relationship with Krishna. he then revives his original quality of Krishna consciousness. So ultimately, the most compassionate and the most helpful thing that we can do for all others is to help them revive their original Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada was saying, it's not an artificial imposition on the mind, it's lying there dormant. It's like if you're sleeping very soundly at night, you've forgotten who you are and you're under the influence of the sleeping state, dreaming, or complete forgetfulness. But if a very loud sound, wake up, then you're immediately roused to your original consciousness. So our original identity, which is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, is literally just below the surface. And applying the process of Krishna consciousness brings it out. And this ultimately solves everyone's problems. By pleasing Krishna, everything is adjusted socially, politically, economically, environmentally. Did I say politically? Politically. So the crying need of the day is that Krishna consciousness should be distributed. And then automatically, we will know the proper proportionate measure of what is compassion. Just to take care of people's food problem or housing problem or medical problem without elevating them to Krishna consciousness is not complete compassion. And of course, by the laws of time and nature, the results of that compassion will be destroyed because the person will meet death or disease or some other type of problem in the material world by some other ways and means by the fluctuations of the laws of material nature. But if they come to Krishna consciousness, then all their problems are solved in one stroke. So I guess I can stop there, and if anyone has any questions or comments, we could further the subject matter further in that way. Hare Krishna.
Hello. I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Okay.
I can hear, but I can't see.
Oh, well, I don't know if my video, I had put the thing on there, so it kind of like...
Rob,
okay, you know what? I think I have like some headphones
okay,
here.
Okay, can you see
and
this?
I'm going to plug it into this device here, and maybe I'll be able to hear you. But actually, no.
Okay.
Rob,
actually, I got an...
James,
okay.
James, just give me a sec. Just give me
Oh,
a sec.
no, I got an amplifier. I have the amplified speaker. I can hear good now.
You can hear well. And can you see us, Ram?
I can see you, and I can see Gaurav, and I see the letter D.
Is Natabar by your side?
I can go get him.
Yeah, because there's a way that there's a button you can press on Zoom that allows you to see
there's a blue button here at the
or
top.
just one or two people.
There's a blue button at the end of you, me, Gaurav, and a D. There's a blue button. Should I push that button?
Try it out. I don't know what it is, but try it.
No. Let me get not to. Or maybe I have to use the mouse. This is not like the. Okay. Oh yeah, I see other people. James.
Yes. How you been?
Yeah, there I see you.
How you been? Been fine?
We're doing good. We're getting a little stir crazy, but we're alive and well.
I hear you. You know, we all been praying as far as dealing with the problems that are going on.
Yeah.
And the virus and a few other things. I think, the universe has come to a point that, we have to clean up, our relationships as well. And, he spent many years in New York and even dealing with Thompson Square Park, the Hare Krishna tree,
right,
and the other things. But, studying Buddhism, recently I got invited to participate in a program by Harvard University. And I was asked this particular question of the use of the word canon. So in the Hare, even though I study Buddhism, in the Hare Krishna movement and understanding, where and how does the word canon fit into the spiritual teachings of what's going on?
Canon, definition. Okay, I'm asking Siri here. Oh, it's telling me a large, heavy piece of artillery, typically mounted on wheels, formerly. No, no, no.
Now, okay.
Canon is a word which describes doctrine or the understanding of a religion. Atma or anybody else, could you give a better definition or more
Yeah.
correct understanding?
No, I think I'm just gonna say one thing, and then I'll segue it back to you because you'll know based on my response. So I mean, canon refers to the doctrine upon which the spiritual teachings are based, and for us it would be, so for us it would be the spiritual doctrines that are taught in the Vedic scriptures, and then the cream of the Vedic scriptures, or the scripture that most clearly, in a summary way, articulates the Vedic teachings, is the Bhagavad-gita. Okay, Ram Roy, you take it from there.
Okay, so James, the question is exactly.
Well, basically, see, we deal with the issue of the word dharma and law and relationships. So, we have the European, interpretation of canon law that is used in the principles of the, what is it, with the Pope and stuff like that. So, they use the word canon law. And as far as the validity, if it's used or as a part of, Buddhist or Vedic scripture teaching or Indian and China teaching, is it a valid term or not, or something that they're trying to integrate into the issue of, we don't want to be with spiritual warfare. We're trying to find a plane of honesty and prayer. It's not death. We want to get out of death mode, but dealing with the issue of life and how we're going to elevate the life and goodness within our society. So, I was just posed with that question, but if it's not really a part of the,
I have an answer.
Huh?
Ram, sorry to cut. Sorry, I just wanted to slightly modify what I said. What I said is right, but let me just make it more accurate. So it's the system of rules.
Yeah, law.
That like the laws, for us would be the spiritual laws that are taught in the Vedic scriptures. So I apologize if I wasn't so clear.
All right. When we're speaking about God, the absolute truth, the supreme being, Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, Ekala Ishvar Krishna Sabhabrita. That means that God is one, he has no competitor, and everyone else is his subordinate. So real religion, there's a verse that's in the 6th canto, where the Vishnu Dutas and the Yama Dutas, right, Atmanivedana, they had a discussion, Dharman tu Shakshad Bhagavat Pranitam, that actual religion is only enunciated by God himself. In other words, man-made or mundane interpretation or adaptation or change, a group of people can't get together and have a vote and say, now this is religion.
No, that's part of the problem. Haribo, thank you.
Yeah. So we're distributing, so Prabhupada very much wanted the original. So he says Bhagavad-gita As It Is. When Prabhupada wrote the preface to this in 1971, nearly 50 years ago, at that time, he said there were some 400 English translations of the Bhagavad-gita, but none of them actually represented what Krishna really is saying. And he showed the result is that up until the time he presented Bhagavad-gita As It Is, not one person became a pure devotee of Krishna. But once the actual words of Krishna were directly given, thousands and thousands, and now even Prabhupada is not here for some 43 years, that the sincere disciples and subsequent disciplic followers of Srila Prabhupada are adhering to his teachings and there's hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of devotees of Krishna all over the world. Like India, for example, had more or less forgotten its original Vedic culture, and Prabhupada more or less just forced them to come back to their proper standard. You see how Arjuna in the 11th chapter, after he sees the universal form, he's praising Krishna, that your words, your instructions are the sweetest nectar and the most dear and beautiful thing for all human society. For all good people, they will accept Krishna directly. When Prabhupada started at 26 Second Avenue, he made the incorporation. Some well-wishing friends said, if you call it Krishna consciousness, people think it's too sectarian. You should make it more open and universal, International Society for God Consciousness. Prabhupada said, no, Krishna consciousness. When one purifies oneself to the ultimate degree and comes to the final stage of self-realization, he realizes God as the all-beautiful Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sadaishvarya Purna, complete in beauty, knowledge, strength, wisdom, renunciation, and wealth, source of all. If one is completely pure in his consciousness, that he be so much in ecstasy, transcendental pleasure, in constant loving rapture with Krishna, that nothing of this material world, even in the topmost heavenly planets, which is like the goal of many religions, to enjoy a higher standard of life and sense pleasure in the heavenly planets, even that is looked upon as just like you or me walking in the street and seeing like a cigarette butt or some garbage. We just like step over it and don't even think about it for a split second. That's how great is the ecstasy of the feeling and loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada came to give that directly. And if we understand what the ultimate goal is, what is the ultimate prayojan, the goal of religion, what is it meant to bring us to, and start to experience that, then everything else is seen in correct perspective. What does Krishna say also in the Bhagavad-gita? When one is enlightened with transcendental knowledge, that knowledge is like the sun rising in the sky, and it lights everything up automatically. And again, this nice analogy of our original consciousness. The sun doesn't create all the objects that we couldn't see in the darkness. They were already there. We just couldn't see it because there wasn't sufficient enlightenment. So our spiritual life, our eternal happiness, our eternal knowledge, our eternal spiritual cognition is there. It's just been forgotten, and it's covered by various layers of impurity. And Krishna consciousness is a happy process. The means and the method and the goal are one and the same. So Prabhupada would say, take to the happy process of Krishna consciousness and you will experience happiness immediately. And Krishna, he's pleased with all of his devotees, not just the topmost pure ones, even the very beginners, because they've taken to approach him. He will give them all instruction and all comfort and everything they need to make all the steps they need to make to reach supreme perfection. But Krishna says, to those who are constantly hearing and chanting and glorifying me, worshiping me with love, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. The intelligence to know how to give up this material body fearlessly, and know where you're going to go. Like, I'm going to take a road trip. I have to. Now they have these, and they could Google Maps, and they'll tell you. Remember 40, 50 years ago, you had to read a map, and you know where you're going. So that knowledge of going back to Godhead knows how to deal with the coronavirus, how to deal with economic impending catastrophe, this, that, whatever life choices are there, individually and collectively, then by making your goal and keeping it always in the forefront, my original love for Godhead, all of those problems are included. Prabhupada would say, if I have, he said $1 million, let's make it $1 billion by exchange rate. Actually, we just celebrated Jayananda Prabhu's disappearance day, and he gave $5,000. And Prabhupada used that to print the first Bhagavad-gita. And some mathematician, he said $5,1967 is $200,000 $20. So you imagine you're like a cab driver and you just have your whole life savings and you just give it to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, what blessings you would get. So anyway, if you have $1 billion, you have $1,000,000, $100,000, $10,000, thousand, hundred, $10, $1, 1 penny, everything included. So all of these problems that we're facing in this world, they're kind of like $10 and $100 problems compared to the real thing that we want to purchase, the $1 billion love of Godhead. And that price is paid simply by pure love and devotion to Krishna. And that we all have. That is our original identity, part and parcel of Krishna. And the only thing we have to do is to love and serve Krishna. And that is our real self, and that is our real happiness. So scholars, religionists, theologians, and everyone, scientists, people in general, they need to experience this and understand this. Then the whole world will be on the same page, and then we can really intelligently and confidently create world peace, which anybody who is sane and not ill-motivated really, really wants, especially at this time. Hare Krishna.
So someone else has a question?
Hare Krishna, Rama Prabhu. I just wanted to share the picture which you mentioned from Easy Journey to other planets.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. That's Bharadwaj's original painting from 1968.
Very nice. Okay, thank you, Sasha.
It's described that this material world is the Vaitarani River. It's a very raging river and very difficult to cross. But the spiritual master is like the ford in Old English language. So you see towns that are called like Watford, Hedeford. Ford means the river crossing. I can't cross the river here. It's too turbulent. Well, you just go downstream here and there's a ford, or the river is less. So by practicing Krishna consciousness, you cross over the Vaitarani River. You get out of this material world. You see the scientists, and where did they go? And who's, or they try by these artificial or non-approved means. It's like, you could get your, try to get an interview and you get your visa, let's say to America, you're from a foreign country, and somehow you get everything, you're approved, you get on the plane, but then when you get to U.S. immigration at JFK, they look at you, they bring you in the room, they question you, and they say, you know what, we're not letting you in, and they send you back. So, but I worked so hard, no explanation, back you go. So you can be, at Tapasvi, so much austerity, you can cultivate so much knowledge, you could have this and this, but if Krishna senses you have not, revived your original love for me, I'm not inclined, because Krishna is the only one who can bring us beyond repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. No demigod, no mundane agency or process can do so. So I know many devotees, they would see this original painting and see this book and they'd just be astounded, have similar kind of reaction. Eureka, this is it. I found the answer. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhakti Sasha. Sasha's putting back the picture now. Does anyone else have a question?
Hare Krishna, Atma Prabhu, I have a question. Hare Krishna, Rama Raya Prabhu, this is
Maria?
Yes.
Okay, there, guys, see you.
Hare Krishna, it's nice to see you, to have your association again. My question is, when I was reading I was following along the purport that we were reading,
Okay.
the symptoms, the part where it is explained that the symptoms that Arjuna exhibited are not due to weakness, but due to his soft-heartedness, and that is described that it is a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. But
Right.
it also mentioned weakness of heart during the beginning of the presentation, and I'm not sure if that weakness of heart refers to soft-heartedness as here, or as a disadvantage or a negative characteristic that we have and we should be working toward as aspiring devotees. Just clarify that and perhaps give an example.
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit. We mentioned at the end of the 15th chapter that the real problem is we're overly attached to matter, and that weakness of heart has to be overcome. So, and I was mentioning how Arjuna, he was seemingly put into illusion or forgetfulness, and Krishna reminded him. We see how Arjuna, he wasn't a tough customer. It wasn't a tough sell to convince him. And we tried to distribute a book, we present all the I don't. He accepted. And ultimately, he said, Krishna, very early on, because he's enjoying a friendly relationship with Krishna, which is an extremely advanced position to get to. But for the sake of all of us, he's saying, friendly talks are not helping me. I'm accepting you as spiritual master. I can find no means to drive away my grief and my unhappiness. I'm turning to you to really give me the right answer. And Krishna did. And then he had other questions, and they went on to all the different chapters. And finally, at the end, Krishna says, well, what is your decision? I say, yes, I completely accept what you say. I completely believe from experience. So there might seemingly be along the way contradictions here and there. Okay, so we're saying that this is a good qualification, soft-heartedness, but then on another saying this is weak-heartedness. So, but I would say due to the intensity or the purity of the intention of the devotee or the person that's being under considered, these apparent contradictions, not only are they reconcilable, but they're actually ways to show various facets of the devotee's diamond-like nature. That we look at it from this angle, and we can see there's different. Just like we were reading on Lord Nrsimhadev, Hiranyakashipu, he's cursing Prahlad, almost a low disruptor of the family, and he's like insulting Prahlad, you wish to die at my hand. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he jumps in and he says, the goddess of Saraswati has interpreted these insulting words and shown that he's actually glorifying Prahlad Maharaj, that he's come into this world to be the uplifter of all the poor and fallen persons who have bad intelligence, and so many other things. So a self-realized person, a person who sees things deeply, they can reconcile the various contradictions like that. Like Krishna himself, in his Mokshalya Leela, he arranged that the whole Yadu dynasty would have a fratricidal fight. And they seemed like to all kill each other out of anger. And he himself, he arranged that he was seemingly shot in the foot by a hunter, so that the atheists and the non-devotees would say that Krishna was a mythological personality, etc., etc., etc. But for the devotees, this is to keep things kind of confidential, that the devotees can understand. So extremes have to be avoided. On the one level, that we praise the soft-heartedness, and then we'll get into okay, then it's all right for devotees to give up their duty to live, preach, and exemplify, distribute transcendental knowledge, and we'll just become like other mundane welfare organizations or different religions. Like Salvation Army, case in point, 100 or more years ago, they were being laughed at for going out in the streets and chanting Christian hymns and this and that. But then when they more or less turned themselves into feeding the poor and helping the homeless and this and that, then everybody loved them. And they wouldn't go out on the street singing and chanting anymore, and their respectability went up. So devotees, they're not meant to be just simply concerned with what the people in general, in their ignorant or lacking spiritual knowledge like consciousness, think is actually welfare work. Now, at the same time, in the name of distributing transcendental wisdom, we shouldn't be callous to people's sufferings. Like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he was on Prikram, and there were beggars. Beggars are meant to go to the holy place if they're actual sadhus and renunciant people, it's the duty of the householders to give them some charity because they're following religious vows, they're preparing themselves to leave this world, they're dependent upon Krishna, that they're dependent on, they've given up everything to depend on Krishna in the holy place. And it's the duty of those who are still in productive life to support them, just like, the parents take care of the children. So he was seeing that, we're just keeping our money, we're just giving it to our institution. We're not going to help these people. And Srila Bhaktisanta criticized this miserly mentality that if you keep like this, then you'll become hard-hearted. Or Prabhupada saw in Mayapur that at the time, 50 years ago, was very, very poor, and that the devotees for their prasadam hall, they throw the leaf plates away, and there'd be a lot of them. And he saw the little village children fighting with village dogs to get some scraps of food. And Prabhupada, he started crying, and he instructed the managers to start Food for Life. He said, wherever is our temple, no one within a 10-mile radius should go hungry. But we're not giving out food, we're giving out sacred sacrament, we're giving prasadam, food that Krishna ate, and it's a blessing. So both things go on simultaneously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Nice question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, can I ask a question?
Is it Raphael?
Yes.
Boy, you got a beautiful sunset at the beach. What's going on over there?
It's just a virtual background. That's all.
Really? Wonderful. Okay. Take your mind off all the gloom and doom over there, right?
I know, right? It's something bright.
Right.
Anyway, Ramaroy, we miss you. We miss you right here in New York City.
I miss it like anything. I've just been living there nonstop. My daily fare every day is going out and thousands of people in public, and now it's like I feel like I don't know, like I'm in a twilight zone.
I know, right? So my question is: the pandemic is a worldwide health crisis.
Okay.
That has affected you, and it has affected everyone, including Yugadharma Ashram, your ashram.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, what is the learning lesson behind all of this?
What does Krishna say in the 12th chapter? How you become dear to me. My devotee was not dependent upon the ordinary course of events is very dear to me. So I remember they had a Schwinn bicycle that I really wanted to get when I was 9 years old. It was called a flexible flyer. We got to be flexible. Krishna wants us in New York City. This is a very unsafe place right now. You can't do your thing. We don't want you to get this thing and get sick and die. Go over here, be safe, and do your thing behind closed doors.
But that's your opinion because you are a very advanced devotee. But how about for the regular average person? What will be a lesson between, for all of this? For the average.
Well, you better become Krishna conscious and realize that. Start to practice, that you're not the material body. I mean, again, the ultimate corona, disaster. This is a terrible thing, and blah blah blah. But we all have the time of death that we all have to meet. So this is like a wake up call. Any bad thing that happens is just like knock knock, hello, reminder. You're not that body. One devotee, Dasarat Sutta, Prabhupada disciple, he wrote a poetry. You're not your body, you're pure spirit soul. You're meant to taste pure love of God. It's life's ultimate goal. So Prabhupada would say that with these types of things, when there's like, the whole kind of like materialistic situation that everybody's used to, when it shows itself to be not as great as they claim it to be, that it'll make a lot of sensible people come forward and question. And like I look on the internet from time to time and I see that people are really, really trying to figure this thing out. And a lot of people are not accepting just, the face value of the thing. And, Prabhupada said that people will be ripe. What does that say in the second chapter? To those who are bewildered by sense gratification, what is it? In the minds of those who are too attached to sense gratification and bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. So it's being shown to everybody that this whole materialistic thing is not all that it's cracked up to be. So people are going to be, sometimes stress and anxiety and hardship are good, for the grossly ignorant and the grossly illusion, because they're going to be able to hear, the pure message. We're singing the same song and we're saying the same thing all the time, but now people will be able to hear what we're saying.
It makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
James, I see your hand waving there.
Yeah, I have to go. I have some work I got to finish up.
Okay.
It was good seeing everybody. Atma and everybody else.
Krishna.
And we talk to you soon. Kenny,
Haribo.
we see y'all. Hopefully it'll be a nice summer, and we'll deal with straighten out.
As soon as
going
they
on.
lift the restrictions on the park and public assembly and all that stuff, we're there,
Yeah, well, it's more than lifting the restrictions. One thing I think before I go, I think they New York and a few other things, not rushing getting back, but what's going on with our spiritual health. And that's really what brought forth probably the virus and a few other things, is that we have to elevate our spiritual consciousness and goodness. Okay? Have a blessed one, everybody.
Haribo, James. We'll see you again soon.
Hare Krishna. Bye-bye.
So if there's one last question, we can take that. Otherwise, we'll go
I
on.
think maybe we want to go on to the kirtan, because my guys on my side might get a little.
They're ready?
It's getting too late.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So we're going to move the computer into the other room.